Are entry-level cybersecurity careers dead? Let's go ahead and take a look at this video from Grant Collins.
Here's a TLDR. Entry-level cybersecurity careers, they do exist, or maybe not. Dumb influencers. Although, it's quite nuanced. It's 2025. The pool for entry-level cybersecurity careers.
Let's take that to task real quick. I know when he says, are they dead, he's probably more so saying, like, are there as many of them as there used to be? But if we just take that at face value for a second, let's do a quick search on LinkedIn. I'll type in, like, cybersecurity entry, like, for entry level in LinkedIn jobs, and we can just scroll through here. We see there's a lot of internships that are available. Some of them are for SkillBridge, like DoD and stuff like that. But if we scroll a little bit here, just keep going down, we see that there is a cybersecurity defense analyst entry level. They do exist, you know, in the strict technical sense. But look, what I recommend to my students is I tell them, like, hey, even though they are out there, these are actually some of the toughest jobs that you can possibly get. Because if you're watching this, maybe you only apply to these entry-level jobs because you've looked at the ones that were not marketed as entry-level and you're like, well, I don't meet like half of these requirements. There's no way that I would get a chance. Well, guess what? If you're thinking like that, I can guarantee you there's many, many other people that are also thinking like that. So what happens? People apply in mass to these jobs that they believe they can get, like these entry-level ones. These are the ones that you're looking at that have 1,000+ applicants and actually end up being harder in many cases to land than like the mid-level roles. So I'm not telling, you know, you guys that have never worked in cybersecurity to go and target like senior roles with like 10-year plus requirements. But what I am saying is that you might want to consider jobs that are not necessarily marketed as entry-level, maybe some of these mid-level roles as well, even if it has a lot of requirements that you don't meet off the cuff. Because many times I've been recommended by recruiters to jobs that I never even met most of the requirements for, and I end up landing the job and I found out, hey, everyone on the team doesn't, you know, most people don't have this stuff either, right? So something to keep in mind.
In general, it's competitive. That is a convoluted statement there. Now, I've personally criticized whether cybersecurity entry-level careers really exist in the world of security. And, you know, there's always going to be subject to debate and criticism. Now, my recommendation ultimately is to set yourself up for the best possible chances, of course, which is going to be working on your personal project portfolio, your just portfolio in general, recognizing the limitations of online applying, and leveraging your community and network as much as possible. The job market dynamics over the past couple of years, they haven't really changed. There has been some completely anecdotal evidence of the job market softening in some areas. Now, ultimately, entry-level cybersecurity, it's going to be quite crowded. All right, let me just go ahead and go over a few points here to maybe navigate the entry-level cybersecurity job market if there is one, or if you believe so, and maybe just setting yourself up for the best possible chances. So data versus anecdotes, taking a look at the good old cybersecurity skills shortage gap, the number of openings is continuing to increase. Now, these are statistics. And if you look at anecdotal evidence and personal experience, a lot of individuals will say, where is the skills shortage gap? And, you know, I would suspect a lot of these so-called openings that are still exist today, well, they're at senior level. They're looking for...
I'm glad that he's addressing this point because that is one of the common misconceptions in cybersecurity is that people will see all these openings and they'll be like, well, how is it that there is a massive skill shortage and at the same time I can't even land an interview? What you need to understand is the key distinction that there is a shortage, but it's not at the entry level. So cybersecurity is in a pretty unique position right now where it's both oversaturated and there's a skill shortage at the same time. He's saying that it's only at the uber senior level, but I can tell you as someone that has worked in the field as well, and maybe it's not the case at his company. I'm not sure what the scenario is at his company, but at my previous employer and all of the previous companies that I've worked for, there's always been like these unfilled seats at the mid-level and up, I would say. It's definitely true that at the senior level, they're starving for talent and starving for like executives and stuff like that. There's a huge shortage there, no doubt, but it's also at the mid-level as well. So just to contextualize this, back when I first joined at Dell in 2021, and they told me that 6 months prior to them hiring me, there was that rec had been opened and they've been looking for a person 6 months. And then they hired me, but they also had a second opening for that same position. I worked at that company for 2.5 years. You can go look it up on my LinkedIn. 2.5 years, almost 3 years. By the time I left that company, they still never filled the second rec. That was still open the whole time. This is very common, I think, at a lot of companies. And, you know, I've seen this as well at my previous jobs where they're looking to hire more people and those seats just didn't get filled. Where that demand is, it's one step above the entry level.
For managers, directors, and people who are senior engineers who can, you know, come in with, say, years of experience. Anecdotes of personal experience, both online and in person, will always differ with whether cyber...
So yeah, here's a common thing that will really rattle people, right? You've probably seen these types of comments on Reddit, online, various places. Cybersecurity is not and never will be an entry-level job. I think the key thing that we need to make sure that we are distinguishing here is just because something is not an entry-level job does not mean that people can't and don't still land cybersecurity jobs as their first job. I've known many people that have landed cybersecurity roles as their very first role out of college. I mean, now at this point, mentoring students, I've helped many students do that. That's one thing that I think we kind of conflate together, because I would agree with this statement at face value. I really would. Cybersecurity is not an entry-level job, and I don't really know if it ever was. Like, if I'm just thinking about, right, like I've been in the field for over 10 years. And when I was getting into the field in 2015, and I told people at my college, like, yeah, I want to get into pen testing. I want to become a pen tester. Most people looked at me with a lot of like skepticism. They're like, oh man, I don't know. That's like a very saturated, a very oversaturated area. It's, it's not really entry level. You probably have a much better chance pursuing something else, like another role in cybersecurity. The offensive side accounts for very little of the overall job market in cybersecurity. It's like a very low percent chance. And look, I could have taken that advice. I could have taken that at face value and been like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do something else instead. But no, I didn't do that. I had conviction that I was going to make this happen. And you guys, like, if you really want to make this happen, like the best piece of advice I could give you is that you just need to be a little more confident in yourself, right? Because the reality is, if you're going to let a comment like this rattle you and cause you to give up, what do you think is going to happen down the line when you apply to 100, 200 jobs and you get denied by all of them, right? You're going to need that conviction. So if this is enough to rattle you, then yeah, maybe this is not for you. Here's the thing. The job market is tough on all the tech jobs right now, right? It's cascading into cybersecurity because it's a cost center, right? It costs them money. It's kind of like insurance. Like, they're hiring cybersecurity people so that they can avoid that catastrophic event where they lose a lot of money. Make no mistake though, when you land that interview, you're going to have to sell yourself. You're going to have to sell yourself as someone that can provide value to that company. And in order to transfer that certainty to the hiring manager, you have to be 10 times more certain than he is about you. A good analogy that I've heard about this is, if you think of HVAC, right? You want to be able to heat the rooms. The water heater, the source, has to contain a lot of heat, because if there's no heat in the water source, how are you going to transfer that heat to the rooms? And so you are that source, right? So you have to be 10 times hotter. You have to be 10 times more confident in yourself so that you can transfer that confidence in the person that you're talking to, into the hiring manager in this case. So it's really first important to understand that this does not conflate with that, but also don't let this stuff rattle you. I'm still helping people get jobs in this every day. Trust me, you can still get into this field. It's never been better than before. Like, we have so many learning resources and stuff out there, especially.
Cybersecurity entry level exists. I found the entry level cybersecurity jobs, it's quite competitive, and they are small. And that's because ultimately you have a huge flood of candidates coming in, applying for these jobs that just really aren't qualified for. And what I mean by that is, security is rooted in the fundamentals of IT. And if you don't bring IT experience or the knowledge of the basics, such as network routing, how are you going to apply proper security on top of that?
That's a good point. And a lot of people, like, when I make comments like this on my videos, people push back. People hate it. People are so offended by that. But that is the reality. Look, it doesn't matter how you feel about it. Like, okay, I can empathize with you guys on this. Sure, it sucks. I agree with you. It sucks, but you know what? That does not change the reality of it, right? So we can sit here and complain about it. We can say, oh, it's not fair. Oh, you have to be like a superhuman now just to get inside. You got to be this, you got to be that. But look, don't attack the messengers. This is just the reality of the situation. You have to know a lot of things in order to be able to get into this field. That's why it pays so much. If it was a very easy to get into job that wasn't that like anyone could just easily walk into, well, guess what? There'd be trade-offs associated with that. It would not be what it is today. It would not be a high in demand job. It would not be a super high paying job. So you should be glad that there's a bit of a barrier. I always prefer to get into stuff that has a high barrier to entry, because it means that not many people are going to be willing to walk that path.
So building up your general IT technical base will serve you well. Now, I suspect a lot of security recruiters are looking for this, experience above all, and that's really the gotcha.
And that is true. It is very much experience above all. That is the shift. And look, you can feel some type of way about this. I don't prefer it either. I would rather it be a little bit more accessible, kind of like it was like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. There has been a huge shift into companies prioritizing people with experience. I've told numerous stories on this channel about this, real examples of this in my career, how I experienced this with people getting turned down that had OSCE 3 because they didn't have enough experience and stuff like that. And honestly, it's the reason that I've shifted in my own program to guaranteeing job experience to all the students that I'm mentoring, because the experience piece in the current job market is the number one factor. You could have all these certs. I know so many people that have OSCP, they can't even land an interview. The key factor is your experience. And look, if you don't have experience, there's ways to make experience. There's ways to go out and get it. That's what I did when I was first learning this. I offered a free pen testing service to people that I knew that were developing apps. Even still, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't really know what I was doing beyond that. So it ended up taking me a lot longer than it takes my students. But this is something that you can definitely overcome. But you need to know that, like, this is where the market has shifted.
Entry-level cybersecurity, or really entry-level anything nowadays. So if you don't have a previous background in IT, build personal projects, volunteer, get involved, and really just work on getting those basic skills developed, because they will serve you well and they'll help you during the process while you are going out and applying for jobs.
Yeah, I would agree with that in part. I mean, it's definitely not bad. You can go and do the DIY route and do your own projects, do project after project after project, watch YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube video, get cert after cert after cert. It's gonna work. If you're dedicated enough, it will work. How do I know? I mean, I DIY'd my own journey into cybersecurity. But here's the thing, it's really a long process. And at the end of the day, there's still no guarantee. That's the thing, there's no guarantee ever. That's a lot to invest. A lot of time, effort, energy to invest just to not know if you're even gonna be focusing on the right thing. There was one summer where I was super motivated to learn cybersecurity. I spent a lot of time, but I ended up learning stuff that was so irrelevant that I basically completely wasted my summer, even though I had all this motivation. So my point is, you can DIY it, and people do that, and it can be successful, but it's gonna take a lot of time. So how important is your time to you? Because for me, when I DIY'd it, it took 3 years. Are you willing to commit like 3 years? And that was 3 years when it was easier to get into cybersecurity. Even now, maybe that 3 years would have taken me 5 if I were to get into it now and taken that same approach. Meanwhile, the students that I'm mentoring, month over month, they're getting into the field as their first job. So if you can follow someone that is, has walked the path before and has helped a lot of people get in, has a system in place to do it, you're just going to get there a lot faster. So it's kind of like, what is the value of your time?
For job search, I do recommend looking for, so-called entry-level roles, friendly careers. What I mean is like something that is like a tier 1 SOC analyst, junior or associate security analyst, incident response tier 1.
This is the caveat. I would say this is not too bad advice, because I've helped a lot of people get jobs in the SOC analyst space as like a tier 1 and more junior level stuff, and them targeting that had a higher success rate. I think when you look at cybersecurity, when you look at the offensive side, like pen testing, you have to understand that's a smaller market, right? Most of the jobs are defensive. So even though there's a lot of applicants to all the entry-level jobs, there's more openings for SOC analysts than there are for pen testers. So for pen testing especially, it's really important to expand your job search outside of just the entry-level stuff. You want to be applying to the mid-level. When it comes to SOC analysts, you have a little bit more leeway to apply to these tier 1, these junior level ones, and still be able to have success with that.
These roles tend to be maybe a little bit more entry-level friendly compared to something like, a senior level engineer. Now, cybersecurity jobs, they're always going to be nebulously named. Some of them are going to be, associate, but it requires 10 years of experience.
Yeah, this is absolutely true. I'll link right now in the card, so in the top right of the screen, a video that I did on the hidden job search terms in cybersecurity. I really break this down, and it'll help if you're not familiar with this concept.
Experience, and it differs for every job posting. And I'm probably stating the obvious here, but I do recommend kind of looking for those maybe so-called tier 1 type jobs, because those will probably be the ones that you can gather in person or online training through the company that you work for. Entry level goes beyond the technical. Okay, so I recognize that I'm kind of contradicting myself here. It's important that you focus on the fundamentals of IT and the proper fundamentals of security, but you also have to realize that there's this fine balance between what you know and then how you interact and communicate that.
This is very true. And there's another thing that when I say this, a lot of people get triggered in the comments. When I say things like, try Hack Me and Hack the Box, don't get me wrong, they're great. They're not enough on their own. And people hate to hear that, but this is part of the reason why. There's other things that factor in besides just your raw elite level hacking skills that are going to be really important for getting that job, because you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to work with team members. You got to be able to interact with other humans at the end of the day and be able to communicate your findings and write reports and do all these things that exist outside the technical, outside of what Hack the Box will prepare you for and Try Hack Me and all that stuff. And yes, people argue like, oh, will they make you write reports for these exams? Yes, that's very true, but I can tell you, as someone that's looked at so many of these, thousands of these reports over my career, these reports that you write for these exams are very different than a commercial grade pen test report.
That I'm trying to get involved in is like speaking, because I feel like I need to become a better communicator, or maybe there's some knowledge sharing that you can do. That's kind of areas and elements that recruiters and managers are looking for individuals who can communicate and who can be team members. So remember that, yeah, you can grind, try, hack me all day, every day, but really what's important as well is working on those skills, getting involved in your community, joining online communities, and ultimately, you have to remember that recruiters are looking for team workers, people who are trainable, and people who are just curious. I always tend to overlook these so-called workplace skills, but they're equally, if not more important than the so-called technical skills. Expand your search. Now, I realize that I'm calling out most of the obvious here, but really any experience will serve you well. If you've done all you can, such as working on your resume, personal projects, attending or pursuing relevant security certifications, networking with your local community, joining online communities, looking at geographical locations, the list goes on. Well, the best bet, of course, is to widen your scope. IT help desk, system administration, network administration, general IT support. All of these will serve you well in building.
Yeah, this is another thing where it's like, I understand he's making a YouTube video. He has to speak very generic, very broad. But the reality is that there is no one size fits all answer to this. And what I would recommend someone to do really depends on what their background is. Like, so for example, if you're coming in from a non-tech related background, you're about to graduate college and you just need a job, yeah, get anything you can. Get a job in help desk or whatever, and then learn cybersecurity on the side, make the career pivot from there. But if you are someone that is majoring in, cybersecurity, and you've been learning the actual hands-on skill set on the side, learning how to do everything that you would do on the job, write reports, how to communicate, all this stuff, then there's no reason why you need to start off in help desk or IT first, especially if you have like a mentor and you have some guidance, you know what you're doing, then you can get a job straight in cybersecurity right away. On the flip side, if you're about to graduate college and you're majoring in, let's say, MIS, Management Information Systems, so like more on the IT side, and you want to get into cyber, but you're about to graduate, you need to find a job, yes, start in IT. In that case, you don't need to start in help desk first. You have the qualifications for IT, become a sysadmin, and then, keep learning on the side, make the career pivot from there. It really is nuanced. It depends. And that's why I like to talk to people individually and have a platform where I can have a personal relationship with the people that I'm working with. So I can say, hey, in your case, this is what you need to focus on.
Relevant knowledge while boosting your experience in IT and kind of gathering that so-called requirement of experience. It's difficult to navigate, but expanding your search certainly helps. So I pointed out a lot of the obvious in this video. Entry-level cybersecurity careers, I do think they exist. They're competitive, they're limited. So in the past, I've expressed criticism on whether cybersecurity really is entry-level and are we being sold the truth. I do believe that entry-level careers do exist. They are quite limited and competitive, but there are opportunities, at least for you to expand your search, your scope, and maybe try improving your chances. Now, if you are looking to grow, that so-called portfolio and personal projects, take a look at projectsecurity.io.
There you have it, guys. Go check out Grant Collins. He's a great guy. And if you're looking for some more personalized help to really accelerate your journey into cybersecurity, go down in the description section below, book a call, and we'll be talking soon.